Have you ever wondered why symbols appear again and again in art throughout history? If you walk through ancient temples or view Renaissance paintings or even modern artwork, you will notice something interesting. Symbols are everywhere, and that is not an accident. Greetings, everyone, and thanks for joining the Inside Arthead podcast. It's here we'll explore the inspiration, motivation, process, and fulfillment of creating art. I'm your host, Roni Zulu, bringing you inspirational stories from artists around the world. Greetings, everyone. My name is Roni Zulu, and welcome to this week's series, The Language of Symbols. Human beings communicated visually long before we developed written language, before alphabets, before books, before recorded history. People carved images into stone and painted figures on cave walls and used simple shapes to communicate ideas. Those early images were not just decorations. They carried meaning. They told stories about life and death and power and nature, the heavens, and the mysteries that people were trying to understand. That tradition never disappeared. It simply evolved. In painting, symbols allow deeper ideas to exist quietly with an image. They operate beneath the surface. A viewer might first see a portrait or a figure or a beautiful composition, but within that image, there may be some symbols that speak to something deeper, something philosophical, something spiritual, something about the human experience itself. When I create a painting, I often include symbolic elements intentionally. Sometimes they reference ancient ideas, and sometimes mythology, and sometimes universal themes that have appeared in art for thousands of years. They are not there to be obvious. They are there to be discovered. In many ways, symbols are the quiet layer of meaning inside the artwork. They are a way for an image to speak beyond words. And that is why symbols have appeared in art across nearly every civilization in human history, because symbols are the silent language of the soul. Before written language existed, humanity already had a way of communicating. It spoke through images. When we look at ancient civilizations like Egypt and Greece or Mesopotamia, we find something remarkable. Their walls and temples and pottery and monuments were filled with symbols. These were not mere decorations. They were a language. Before alphabets were widely used, symbols allowed people to communicate ideas that were often too complex for simple words. Ideas about life and death and the divine and humanity's place in the universe. Symbols carried philosophy and religion and history and cultural identity. A single image could hold layers of meaning that a paragraph or words could never fully capture. They also served a visual storytelling. A symbol could pass knowledge from one generation to the next without the need for written text. In this way, symbols became one of the earliest libraries for human thought. And even today, those ancient images still speak to us. Because long before we wrote language, human beings learned to see meaning. In many ways, the first language of humanity was not spoken. It was seen. Why do symbols feel powerful, even when we don't fully understand them? You can look at an ancient symbol, a mythological image, or a religious painting, and something inside you responds immediately, even if you cannot explain why. The reason is that symbols do something very unusual. They bypass the logic. Most information in our modern world is designed for the intellect. It explains and defines and categorizes. But symbols work differently. They do not ask you to analyze them first. They go straight to the intuition. A powerful symbol connects directly with the emotion and inner recognition. You may not know the full history behind it, And you may not know the mythology or the philosophy attached to it. But something inside you still understands, and that is why symbolic imagery has been so important throughout human history. It is the reason myths have endured for thousands of years. It is the reason religious art continues to move people. And it is the reason ancient civilizations filled their temples and sculptures and paintings and symbolic imagery. Because symbols communicate something deeper than explanation. They communicate meaning. In my own paintings, I often use symbols very quietly in the image. Sometimes they're obvious, and sometimes they're very subtle. But they are always there to create another layer of meaning beneath what the eye sees first. A symbol doesn't shout, and it doesn't argue, and it doesn't try to convince you. It simply speaks to the part of you that already understands. Because a symbol whispers to the part of us that already knows.